A wildfire destroyed his home and accidentally saved his life. When doctors missed an aggressive blood cancer, Steve Brown built an AI swarm that caught it in minutes and helped tailor his treatment. Now, he's turning that N of one breakthrough into CureWise for everyone. Welcome, humans, to the Neuron AI Explained podcast. I'm Corey Knowles, joined here as always by my co-host Grant Harvey. How are you today, Grant?
Doing good, doing good. How you doing, Corey?
Good. I'm excited about this call. Today we're talking with Steve Brown, founder and CEO of CureWise. And why Steve? Because CureWise is one of the clearest, highest stakes examples of agentic AI moving from demos to real decisions in medicine. And we think that is awesome. Steve, how are you today?
Great to be here.
Good, good. We're sure excited to have you. This is a topic that's near and dear to both of us, and we're regularly discussing, kind of our hopes for AI and healthcare in the future. And it's nice to see a project coming out of the lab and into fruition. What you're working on here.
Well, I'm when you're doing it for yourself, when you're the first customer, you get to you kind of know what you need, and you kind of can keep iterating it and improving it because you're customer number one. It's not that I really wanted to be customer number one for a cancer AI application, but it is really a phenomenal use of AI I have found based on just using it for myself.
You play the cards you're dealt, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was doing a lot of different things in AI. I was throwing a lot of spaghetti at the wall, and the challenge was it was all sticking. So it's like, what am I going to do? So this wasn't the mission I chose. It's the mission that chose me, but it is really a phenomenal use of AI because cancer is so complex and everybody's cancer is different. And it's the first time we've had a technology that can handle the kind of the level of complexity that we need. So, and it's been very, very instrumental for me in understanding my own condition and helping me figure out how to get the best possible treatment that maps to my own kind of genetics of my own cancer. If a million people get, the latest COVID variant, that's a million people with the identical pathogen. But if a million people get cancer, that's a million different genetically unique diseases because it's your own unique genes mutated in some unique way. We kind of lump things together and say it's all cancer, but it's a million different diseases. So it's very, very complex. And the AI is the first thing that we've had that can just kind of deal with so many variables at the same time.
Well,
Yeah,
let's
for
start.
real.
Let's kind of start with your background here. You've had, quite a journey from Silicon Valley entrepreneur to filmmaker, and now back to tech with CureWise. Can you kind of explain how that all went down and what brought you here?
I studied physics and computer science at Stanford and went right into Silicon Valley startup world looking for the biggest problem in the biggest industry to work on. That kind of led me to healthcare and chronic care technology because healthcare is the biggest industry, and the biggest problem is that 70% of healthcare is all the stuff that kind of comes down to chronic disease and our own decisions and our own behavior. But I was always working on applications for somebody else's problem.
Yeah.
So we were doing the things that made a lot of sense. We did a lot of the foundational work that led to telemedicine and remote patient monitoring and chronic care, a lot of things that are kind of standard today. We have all the arrows in our back and all the scars to show for being kind of the pioneers of that field, and even getting our work into an act of Congress to kind of legitimize the whole field. But that was
Wow.
always, that was a big need, a big unmet need, but it was for other people. I decided I didn't want to do another healthcare deal because life's too short for another healthcare technology company because things take forever. I didn't want to do another deal that needed another act of Congress. So I left healthcare and I was doing things in kind of consumer productivity. And then that kind of led to doing really fun things in the film world. Um, when COVID shut down the film world, and then when AI came out, kind of really kind of came out in a new way, kind of at the same time, I kind of brought those two worlds together of the character and story world of film, and the new technology world of AI. So I started building a lot of things that were like bring characters to life from history, use this for
Ooh.
education, use
Ooh.
this to learn languages, use this to kind of talk to these artificial people called AIs and make them very empathic and very interesting and fun to talk to. I was doing a lot of things like that. When I ended up with a cancer diagnosis, I I started off by taking these kind of agentic things I was working on and kind of applying it to my own medical record. So like a lot of people who have cancer diagnosis, you probably were misdiagnosed for a while before you got the diagnosis. Seems to be, I'm hearing, a fairly common thing because things kind of show up and, take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning kind of, works 90% of the time, but it's the other 10% that'll kill you. And so I was sort of in a situation where, it's like, yeah, this is a fishing expedition. We can't really find anything, maybe it's just gas, take gas X, maybe it's, maybe you're stressed out, but I ended up getting diagnosed not initially by the AI, by doctors, but I had a whole new set of doctors because the fire burned down our house and I ended up in a different community and I ended up in the emergency room with pain in my abdomen after a big steak dinner. So I thought I
Oh.
was obstructed and I went in and I asked for a CAT scan to rule out obstruction. But they found a bunch of things that 2 weeks earlier my other doctor didn't see. And that led to getting the diagnosis. What I did with the AI when I was in the hospital, I said, well, why didn't they catch this earlier? So I took my medical record as of all the previous tests, and I used that as kind of my baseline. And I sort of using my AI agents working with my medical record and kind of within a medical point of view. And I had multiple points of view, multiple agents look at it and then kind of synthesize the results. It always came out with like spot on, hey, you probably have this and you need to get these tests to figure it out. And it was 100% on the mark. And so I looked at it,
Wow.
I said, well, if my doctors had AI before, I would have gotten this diagnosed probably a year ago
Yeah.
because they
Wow.
would have done those tests. And if I had it, I would have asked my doctor for those tests and I would have gotten diagnosed as well.
Right.
So there's a lot of things going on like open evidence and doctors are getting AI.
Yeah.
But and there's a lot in the medical world that kind of worries about, is this going to work? Or, there's a lot of anxiety about the AI in medicine for good reason, because it's high stakes. But I'm doing it from the patient point of view. And if the
Right.
if the if you know how to ask better questions of your doctor, or you study up on what's going on, and you go in and use that 10 minutes with your doctor in a more enlightened way, you're going to get better results. So that's
Yeah.
really what I was doing with the AI. It's like, everything I'm on was prescribed by doctors, but the conversations that led to what I'm on, the AI coached me in how to figure that out and what to talk about.
Yeah, I mean that you bring up a really good point because like we're seeing this interesting phenomenon where people are self-diagnosing with ChatGPT, but like they're using 4.0 a lot of the time, and that's not always like the best way to do it. Some doctors are even using it during appointments to check like certain interactions. I mean, like you mentioned open evidence. That's another tool that a lot of doctors are using that's built for doctors. So that's a lot better than, GPT 4.0 or whatever. I guess now we're on GPT 5. But what are your thoughts on this like kind of widespread unstructured use of AI for medical decisions, and what did you do differently that kind of helped you out?
Well, I think it's anything where people are going to have the ability to explore and ask questions and learn is a good thing. And a lot
I
of
agree.
people, if you're using, whether it doesn't matter what model you're using, if you're using it to educate yourself, you're going to learn something. But when it comes to healthcare, you kind of want a deterministic response. And the fact is, you don't get a deterministic response from any of the models. It is a deterministic system. I mean, you put it under a microscope and all the ones and zeros are known states, but
Mm.
what you get is unpredictable, and small changes in the input, in the context, can lead to big changes in the output. So um, that kind of makes people nervous. But what I've seen is, we've taken all of the knowledge of humanity and we've compressed it into these models. And I've been looking at very, very specific rare things in medicine that there's a lot of knowledge in there. Just like, there's a lot of knowledge in PubMed, there's a lot of knowledge in the Library of Congress, but which row of books you go down and which ones you pull out will kind of, can be a pretty big difference in response. So how do you manage the situation where the knowledge is there? Am I sure I'm getting closer to what's right for me? Well, what I looked at it said, well, gosh, when you ask the question differently, you get a different answer. When you ask the question from a different point of view, like, a gastroenterologist versus a cardiologist, you'll also get a different answer. So how do I take this kind of diversity of answers and turn that into a strength? So I said, well, I have like 36 different agents, all with different points of view. And when they look at your medical record from different points of view, they might get different answers. And you might have a different conversation with them. But when you take those 36 different points of view and you synthesize them and look where answers converge, that also is a really important signal. If you see somebody that's just an outlier and nobody else, and then when the agents talk to each other, they know they don't agree. They say, hey, that's out there. That tells you something. But when you take an answer and you feed it to the other agents and they say, hey, that's a good idea. I didn't think of that the first time. But now what you're doing actually is you're creating a new pathway through this massive kind of collective consciousness of human knowledge. So every time you do this, a different pathway. So I want a lot of different pathways and I want to look for convergence because that's really useful. If all of human knowledge is compressed into this thing called an LLM, there's a lot of different points of view in that knowledge, and there's a lot of variety in what could be right and what could be wrong. So the other thing, I'm also not asking for like, what's the answer? Like, hey, here's my data. What's the answer? Even on the
Yeah.
diagnostic side, it's called differential diagnosis. It's based on, hey, based on all of this stuff, it could be this, it could be that, it could be something else. What test should we do to help differentiate? Could it be this or could it be that? So on the
Mm.
diagnostic side, and diagnosis is only, like the very, very beginning thing. Once you got your diagnosis, you're done. Everything else is about, well, what should I do next? So that's where the AI really is useful. But just on
Mm.
the diagnostic side, because everybody kind of talks about it, it's really a question of let's narrow the field. Let's make sure we didn't miss anything. Let's cover our blind spots, and let's figure out what tests we should do next. So for me, they didn't do they did a bunch of tests, but they didn't do the one definitive test that would determine, hey, is it a blood cancer or not? And, the answer could
Mm.
have been like, hey, you definitely need to do this test. And, maybe the answer was, oh, well, that test was negative. Let's keep looking. It must be something else. Now what test should we do? But in my case, I did like 100 tests. There were signals in those tests, but my doctors didn't see the signal. They see
Mm.
we see there's a lot of stuff that is abnormal, but our human brains are it's hard to grok all of this,
Yeah.
Totally.
this much data. So they just missed the need for yet one more test that would have been very defining and said, oh, absolutely, this is what's going on.
Seems like
Right.
its ability to understand correlations and recognize patterns, that's just a thing it's probably going to do better than humans. When you're talking about massive sets of blood work like that, I would bet there will certainly be things it will catch that people would just miss, not due to like incompetence, but like just due to the fact that it's able to run those patterns and equations around them to better understand them, probably.
It's due to the fact that medical knowledge is beyond human scale.
Mm.
We produce more medical knowledge in a day
Yeah.
than any doctor could possibly read, in a year. It's just too much.
Yeah.
So you know what you know, and there's a lot of looking under the lamppost. It's like the guy lost his keys, and it could have been anywhere, but he's looking under the lamppost. Why? Because that's where the light is. Like there's a lot of that going on. We look for what we know, and we don't
Yeah.
know what we don't know. But if AI has read everything and read all the literature, it's more likely to find things that that we haven't thought of. So it's
Yeah.
that's why it almost seems like it's negligent. Pretty soon it's going to be negligent not to use AI to check all this stuff and say, did we miss anything? That's a big difference than saying AI is going to be your robot doctor to give you the answer. It's like, no, like the use of the best and highest use of AI is help us all be smarter.
Mm,
Grant and I'm sorry to
yeah.
interrupt, Grant. I know we've had a couple questions lined up. We've
No,
had
it's
a
great.
discussion around this a number of times about the fact that, like, I believe my grandkids, I have 3 grandkids, a 4th one on the way, I just found out last night, by the way.
Hey,
Uh,
congratulations! Oh my
Thank you.
gosh, you didn't even tell me this
Yeah, I
off
didn't, I
camera.
forgot. I didn't forget, I've just been busy today.
Woo!
So,
Breaking
grandbaby
baby
number
news.
4 coming. I think by the time they are 18 or 20, they will find the idea that we did it without AI to be terrifying. And maybe for a
Well,
lot of fields.
so you think about AI, where, let's say when we're at, chat GPT 6 or, well, whatever, the next version, because GPT 5 wasn't really quite as interesting as everyone thought it would be. But,
We should
but,
get to that,
let's say we
yeah.
get to, whatever the next, 10x better AI is, we probably need a nuclear power plant to power it.
Mhm.
Um,
Oh, they're already
we're
signing deals
doing
for
we're
that, right,
doing it
Steve?
on 20 watts. We're doing it on 20 watts. So,
Wow.
there's something
Yeah,
going on the way we're doing it. There's actually a different paradigm than the way AI is doing it. I mean, we don't have,
Yeah.
stacks of GPUs in our brain. We're doing it on eat your Wheaties. And, they need to build nuclear power plants just to get close to something that feels, like it's catching up to us. But like we've got a
right,
massive amount of untapped potential ourselves. And how do we
right.
maximize our own potential? Well, it really helps to have handy, a robot that's read all of human knowledge, so it's always handy.
Yeah,
I don't think that I'm not worried at all about the robots beating us. I think that we are going to get a lot smarter because
Yeah.
imagine when your grandkid from like 2 years old on gets to talk to all of human intelligence. That kid's going to be a lot smarter than we are.
Even less smart kids are going to be more smart is what
Yeah,
you know,
it
it's a
raises the
really
baseline, right?
interesting thing. Yeah, yeah, that's the baseline, yeah, and I
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
like, I love the idea that I would have 4 medical experts, a billion-dollar data center, and a giant nuclear power plant trying to figure out how to deal with my
Right.
illness, like, that's what I
yeah,
want, that's the caliber and amount of care I want going into keeping me alive.
yeah.
I hope I don't need that, but when the time comes that I do, I wanna know that there's a nuclear power plant churning
Just for me.
just for me.
Well, okay, so this is really interesting, and I do want to get back to CureWise in a minute, but I just want to follow this thread here. So there is actually research that came out recently that shows that doctors who regularly use AI for cancer screening actually get worse at detecting cancer when that AI isn't available. And this kind of builds on some of the stuff that we talked about recently with the MIT study that showed like when you use AI to write your paper, like surprise, surprise, months later you don't remember what you wrote. So
Yeah.
what like in this case specifically, their accuracy drops by 6%. So what are the implications in your mind, Steve, of medical professionals becoming actually dependent on these tools as they get even better?
We're all dependent on our tools. There used to be a day where you could do a bunch of math, by hand and know how to do all that. And I haven't, done that, in decades, and I'm totally dependent on technology to do this stuff. That I don't think that's, that's not the concern. Okay, so now you've got this great tool that helps you do your job much better and be much smarter and see things that you haven't seen before. And oh, someone takes that tool away and you feel a little bit lost. Well, that probably is true of pretty much every tool that human beings have ever used. It's
So
like,
true.
wow, I'm not
Right.
really so good at digging that hole by hand anymore now that I have a backhoe. This is true across the board. So
Right.
I don't think that's the concern, but I think that humans with a great tool, you get good at using the tool and you get smarter and you learn more. Like as long as we
Spot
are
on.
constantly learning, there's more, neural connections happening in our own heads. And that's a good thing. Is that a right measure? Like, hey, if I take the tool away, you're not as good as you were anymore. I mean, I think that's sort of a kind of almost like a ludicrous kind of comparison.
That's
And
fair.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of people in medicine that are probably concerned that they have all this sort of exclusive knowledge, and they kind of play, you play God a little bit when you're kind of, you have patients whose kind of life depends on you, and you're respected as having all this judgment. And I
Yeah.
think, well, what happens if people aren't respecting me because they think they know more because they're talking to AI all the time? I think we need to
Right.
adapt. I've talked, my doctors all know that I'm using AI and building AI, and I went to the Mayo Clinic and I talked to the top person in the world in the for the disease I have. And she thought it was super interesting what I was doing with AI. I'm there saying, like, look, I'm here for a second opinion, not a second opinion to my other doctor, a second opinion to the AI.
Yeah.
Um, but
Right.
but the fact is, the best doctors are going to use the best tools to get smarter. And when patients also use the best tools to get smarter, they're going to have better interactions with their doctors. And this is where this is what part a couple of reasons I decided to focus on cancer. One obvious one, because it's like,
Self-interest. Yeah.
but it's also it's something everybody who ends up with cancer, it's something you're gonna have kind of there's not a cure for it. You're gonna have it for the rest of your life. You're gonna always be worried, is it gonna come back? You're always gonna be wondering, like, what are the new treatment is out there if it comes back? Or when it comes back, if it gets resistant to the treatment I'm on, so you're gonna be concerned for the rest of your life, probably, about what's going on in medical science, and am I getting the best thing that's right for
Yeah.
me? I mean, that's going to be an ongoing concern. And the fact is, the path to the cures for cancer, we know what that path is. It's getting the treatment that is precisely right for you, given the unique version of cancer that you have. And we
Yeah.
start off by carpet bombing and hoping that we kill more of the bad guys than the good guys, but knowing we're going to kill a lot of the good guys in the
Via
process.
chemo, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's chemotherapy, and maybe chemotherapy advances. It's not carpet bombing anymore. Now it's a sawed-off shotgun. But
Yeah.
it's still imprecise. It's like, it's not that sniper rifle just hitting the cancer cell and nothing else. But we're
Mhm.
getting closer and closer to more precise treatments.
Mhm.
And what a cure looks like is when we're able to create or find the treatment that precisely knocks out the version of cancer you have and doesn't do all the collateral damage. So that's the
Yeah.
progression. But to do that, it's a different paradigm of how we even deal with the medical knowledge. It's like, you can do a randomized controlled trial if you got a bunch of people that are all the same, and we vary this one thing at a time and, see if it makes a difference. But when everyone has a different disease, you get down to like N of one, like,
Mhm.
how do you do the old kind of clinical trial? It's a different process. It's a different kind of way of dealing with medical knowledge. Our old reductionist approach of, one variable at a time. Well, that's not even how medicine works. It's like many variables at a time in a
Yeah.
whole network that, happens to shift things a little bit more this way, so you can overcome the disease. It's complicated. And AI can help us figure out precision medicine where we really just couldn't do that before at the level we need it.
I have a question around CureWise. Like, we're seeing more and more models being used in, medical situations, like MedGemini, for example, claiming really high accuracy. Microsoft is doing some work with doctors, and even GPT-5 is finding some uses. How does CureWise fit into this ecosystem? Do you plan to, like, leverage models from other companies? Are you already using other models? Are you building your own?
We're using all the models because they've
Smart.
all been all the major models. They've all clearly, and you can test this, they've all clearly been trained on a vast corpus of medical literature and medical information. They've all recognized that medicine is a major use case, and probably,
Mhm.
if ChatGPT, they watching what everyone's typing in, they're seeing a lot of people are using it for medical questions.
Yeah, it was a
It's a
big part
super
of the GPT-5 presentation, which I wanted to get
yeah,
your thoughts on, but we'll get to
big
that.
part of
Yeah.
the GPT presentation. But I found that actually GPT-5 was less accurate than GPT-4 in my case.
Oh, wow.
But it
Really?
was yeah. I mean, I think there's a it may be overtrained. It may be going too deep in rabbit holes, and but I don't know. I don't know the cause. I mean, these LLMs
Mhm.
are a black box. We've compressed all this knowledge in there, but we no one really knows how to go explore it. Other than kind of doing the approach that I'm doing is like, well, let's create multiple agents to explore it and
Yeah.
multiple different pathways. But it may be more accurate in some things and less accurate in other things. But I'm using all the major models, and all the major versions of the models, and I can tell from this that they all have been trained on medical knowledge. That doesn't mean they give the same answers. They give different answers. So if I say, like, I've got 10 different major models that I'm using, and 36 different agents with trained on different points of view, that's 360 different answers potentially. But when you
Wow.
go synthesize those and have them kind of cross check each other, you find areas of convergence. The whole goal is to, like, let's make sure we leave no stone unturned. Let's cover all our
Yeah.
blind spots, and let's find the best answer. And it's not the best, like, definitive answer. Like, it's not diagnosis and treatment. It's like, hey, here's what you should talk to your doctor about. Here are some things going on that might be relevant to you, that might, like in my case specifically, I was put on the standard of care, which is the best thing for most people,
Yeah.
probably. But it wasn't the best thing for me. And I was able to see that I've got specific genetic variations in the cancer that mean that, oh, the standard of care is probably not going to be as good for me. And there's some other stuff that's going to be better for me. Um, so, I'm like, I was on standard of care for the first 2 months. The first month, it looks great. My numbers are coming down, and then they start to flatten out, just like the AI had predicted. I'm like, well, what you normally get is like, well, let's keep doing this for 6 months. And, if then we'll decide and we'll try something else. Like, they don't give you they don't always give you the best new stuff until all the old stuff's failed. And
So
in my
true.
case, the version of it's a kind of related to a myeloma. It's not multiple myeloma, but it's related. The plasma cell cancer, instead of making antibodies like it's supposed to, it makes a toxic misfolded protein, which can destroy my heart and can destroy my kidneys. So, if I let this go on too
Jeez.
long and, don't do the best stuff first, it's like, I actually went to a cardiologist, and I'm like concerned about my flattening response. And the answer is, look, we got a lot of options here, and there's always heart transplant. It's like, well, no, I don't. I'm here to prevent that. I don't want
Yeah.
to. I don't have that kind of damage yet, and I don't want to get it. So,
That's why
um,
I'm here today. Yeah.
yeah. So no, that was a very, I mean, I love my cardiologist. That was a super motivational pep talk. Like, it's like, I need to get more aggressive on this. I can't take anything for granted, and, like, I need
Yep.
to get to the Mayo Clinic. So, and a few days later, I was at the Mayo Clinic for, a second opinion. I knew, and I talked to him, and I have other doctor at UCSD, and then I have another one at UCSF. I kind of found some of the top people in the world for
Uh-huh.
what I'm dealing with, and I wanted, everybody has a slightly different opinion among the experts. So I just like with the AI, I need a lot of different opinions. I need to synthesize the results. There's not one with the perfect answer, but I
Yeah.
want to hear them all. I really
Yeah.
want to hear them all. And I'm kind of modeling that same approach with the AI.
And when you did this, so walk us through this. So you got like a series of like diagnostic reports from your doctor, and that's what you uploaded? Like how exactly, like how did it know the information? You know what
So
I
I
mean?
went to Yeah, so all that medical record is in my chart.
Mhm.
I went there and I, downloaded it all, and then I uploaded it to CureWise. Because well, it's my data, I can do whatever I want with it. So I
That's
so
right.
Right.
I downloaded it and I uploaded it to CureWise, and in the attachments to my bone marrow biopsy, there was this whole cytogenetics report where they did a bunch of genetic analysis of the cancer. And there's pages of stuff that looks like Greek, and probably is Greek. A lot of Greek symbols. There's a bunch of stuff that look, if you're a microbiologist, you know what some of this stuff is, but a normal person is not going to know what any of this means.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm saying, okay, look, here's all the attachments, something we haven't even talked about. The doctors hadn't even talked about yet. What's going
Right.
on? What does this
Yeah.
mean? And so, what it meant is, well, there's a specific genetic variation of the cancer, which used to be bad news, but now it's kind of good news because there's happens to be it means it's vulnerable to this other drug. Well, this other drug was approved for a different disease and not approved for mine. So it's off label. But, any doctor who knows about it and,
Yeah.
and most doctors are like, well, that's off label. You've got a rare disease. There's no definitive clinical trial that's, proved all this stuff, but it all, makes sense in theory. But,
Yeah.
most doctors will be like, I'm not going to do that.
They don't want to
And,
stick their name on it. Yeah.
yeah, but you go
Right.
to the top people in the field who are more in the academic medical centers and are involved in research. They know about this stuff and they're using it. So I went there and I said, look, I want this. I think I need this. You explain to me why you don't think I need it, but from everything I know, I think I need this. Now, then the issue is it's off label. Is my insurance? It's off label. It's 25,000 bucks a month, retail. Maybe with Mark Cuban's
Mark Cuban.
thing, you can get a little cheaper, but still, it's a lot of money. It's off
Cost
label. Is
price.
my insurance company even going to pay for it? Well, if your regular doctor tries to prescribe it, maybe your insurance company is going to say no. But if one of the top experts in the field is saying, look, this person needs it, and here's why they need it, and it's a lot cheaper than a heart transplant. So my insurance
Good
company
point.
paid for it, and I'm on this
Wow.
miracle drug. And one of my doctors at UCSF, I found him because he was recruiting for a clinical trial, the first ever phase 2 clinical trial on the combination of drugs that I'm on. So I'm
Wow.
like, okay, well, I need to talk to this guy. And then I see they canceled the clinical trial. So then I'm like, okay, I really need to talk to this guy. Like,
Yeah.
what do they know? So the
Right.
reason they canceled the clinical trials, they couldn't get enough patients. So this is the paradox. As you get to precision medicine, you had to have a smaller and smaller group of people. This already was rare. And then I've
Yeah.
got this rare, then this variant that narrows it down. I got a specific version of that, which narrows it down. And, it's just like, no one's going to do a clinical trial on it because it's
Yeah.
just but he said, look, I couldn't get enough patients for the clinical trial, but I've got a lot of patients who are doing just this. And I think it's a good idea. So, it was a validation of this. And my main hematologist at UCSD, she prescribed it. The insurance company paid for it, and it's been extraordinarily effective. It's
Wow.
brought the cancer, markers into the normal range now
Heck
on the
yeah.
key metric. So it's you got to keep beating it down to make sure to come back. So I'm going to be, on treatment for a while, but this has been remarkably effective. Well, I only got this because I figured out, I learned about it and I asked for it.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
the doctor is always the human in the loop. But if you know what to ask for, you know what to advocate for, you're going to get better care. I mean,
You
in
gotta
this
really take
country,
charge of your health care too.
yeah,
I went
That's
absolutely.
through
yeah.
as my mom was aging and before she passed, it was so easy to just, bounce along to the next dose round of antibiotics and do this and do that. And, we had to kind of push a little bit. We went to some different hospitals and, I mean, she lived some years longer than we ever expected she would, and I'm convinced that's because we just tried to, make sure we got her to the best hands we could and did what we could with the tools we had available at the time.
But
What you're doing here is, very much the next level of that, and I think it's absolutely awesome.
I think in most cases, you're either going to get the standard of care. It's like, oh, you got this, this is what we do. Or you're going to get the care that you advocate for.
Yes.
So this is, the role of the AI in this is not to diagnose or treat any disease. The role of AI is to help you learn enough that you can be a better advocate for yourself or whoever's advocating for you to be a better advocate, so you get to better answers faster.
At least you understand the conversation in the room with the doctor better too. I mean, that's equally important. I think this is important work.
Well, your doctor, might have 2,000 patients, so you've got so
Yeah.
you've got one. So, and you got 10 minutes with your doctor, maybe, once every 3 months or something. There's a lot going on in between, and you want to maximize, every minute of those 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So, or, maybe it's half an hour, but, like it's a limited amount of time. Or
Right.
maybe it's like 20 minutes with the nurse practitioner and the doctor pokes his head in. I mean, like you don't get a lot of time, and the doctor's got a lot of other things going on. So being able to even rehearse the conversation with your doctor. I mean, that's what I do.
That's
I mean, I do
true.
that, I'm like, I'm a fairly well-educated person, and I've been around the block in the medical world in the business side. And my dad was a doctor.
Yep.
I'm used to talking to doctors. But still,
Cool.
like being able to kind of rehearse the conversation and then ask it different ways and try to figure it out. It's like, it just makes you smarter.
I have a question. So previously when you and I met, I shared how sharing health data with AI companies over the cloud seemed kind of risky to me. Like I still am a little bit nervous about that component of this. I mean, mostly just because you don't know what happens with it after that. Is at one point OpenAI going to get bought by someone else and it gets sold to the insurance companies? Like you don't know what could happen. But you said that, cancer patients prioritize getting answers over privacy. And Sam's even called that out, that like AI doesn't have the same privilege as actual doctors do. And he thinks there should be some kind of special privilege for that, like for AI systems. I mean, what do you think about that? And how does the industry navigate this tension between urgency and like being able to advocate for yourself and data protection and a platform handling such sensitive information? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Obviously, it's your most sensitive information, but
Right.
I have noticed that, in talking to people with cancer, it's, there's higher priorities. It's not that people don't care
Survival.
about privacy. I mean, everyone wants privacy, but there might be a higher priority,
Hmm.
like survival. Um, but I think the concern with the AI companies, I mean, like, and this is true with OpenAI. I mean, they said, well, actually, even when you delete those conversations, they can't delete them because, maybe they're in some lawsuit and they're going to be discovered in discovery. And heck, maybe their discovery is going to be like, you're going to be able, it's not going to be on the web someplace. So I think it's definitely a reason to be careful about using just the generic chat chat GPT type interface,
Agreed.
because it's not protected. If you're working with a medical application layer company, they're using the API, and the API interactions are, at least according to everything I've heard, are not discoverable, and they don't get to keep those, and they don't get to, there's a different level of protection on
That's
those.
huge.
And there's, and there's a lot of other, any medical company is going to great lengths to do other layers of privacy and security, which you have to do in medicine. So I think, there's a great need for application layers in medicine, partly for things like privacy, but also partly to make sure that people use it in the right way for the right things. Because you go to
Yeah. Right.
ChatGPT, there's no guidance at all. I mean, Sam Altman was there. Altman was there on the GPT-5 launch, and he talked about like using GPT-5 to, diagnose and treat diseases. Well, that might have been like a direct challenge to the FDA. we don't say that. Like we say like, you know what? This is to help educate yourself, but like talk to your doctor about that.
Right.
This is imperfect, and it's, it totally depends on what you put in there, and use this to educate yourself, to learn what options might be out there, and be a smarter patient, and be a better advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
Like, no one should be using this to diagnose and treat diseases. That's
No, no, I think that's fair, especially in a standard chat window on the public web. Yeah. Yeah, like I there's a variety of reasons I wouldn't. But this leads us into a next question here that I think is a really good one, in that how do we build a medical system that can handle millions of unique cases rather than simply standardized protocols? Like right now, people largely, I say largely, a large percentage of people don't seek care, like preventative care, especially, because it doesn't really prioritize individual health concerns. Is there a way to fix that? Is probably the
well,
better way to word it.
well, you're talking.
Right.
This is the $4 trillion question.
Yes.
Right.
When I was in healthcare before, 20 years ago, I would give this talk about healthcare is $1 trillion industry, and like 70% of it is all the, come down to our own behavior. Well, now it's $4 trillion. It's like my stump speech was always like, if we don't figure out how to fix this, our country's going to go bankrupt. Well, we still haven't fixed it, and we're still going bankrupt. So it's still a massive, massive challenge. And there's sort of two parts of this equation. One is the sort of prevention side, and that really ends up kind of being on us. It's like,
Yeah.
we got to
Mhm.
we got to do the right things. I don't think it's the right job to say, hey, our doctors, I need a doctor that's going to help me eat my vegetables. No, it's like we got to that's our responsibility.
That's
But
on us. Yeah.
once you get something serious, you're in the medical system, and the medical system is there to help you get better. I mean, a patient like me walks into the hospital, that's like an ATM walking in the door. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
I'm very expensive. I cost nothing. I'm a guy. I never go to the doctor. Like, then now when I'm going to the doctor, it's like, okay, well, I'm super expensive. And would I be cheaper if I would have, somehow prevented this or caught it earlier? Maybe, but like, once you're in the system, you're in the system. So now,
Yeah.
how do you deal with that? Well, still, when you have any kind of complex condition, chances are that doing the right thing a little bit sooner is going to be much more efficient.
Agreed.
When I was doing the chronic care company, when we were deciding what to focus on, my kind of thought experiment was stand at the door to the hospital and watch everyone coming in, and just ask yourself how many of these hospital admissions could have been prevented. Not if we ate our vegetables 20 years ago, but if we knew a little more, like 5 days ago or 4 days ago or 3 days ago. And it turns out like half of those things could have been prevented if 5 days ago, it might have been an office visit, not a hospital
Yeah.
admission. So,
Wow.
getting to the right answer just a little bit sooner
Yeah.
has there's massive leverage in that. For cancer, I mean, there's 600,000 people in the US are going to die of cancer this year. And
Mhm.
how many of those people got diagnosed at stage 4 or stage 3? And if they had gotten diagnosed at stage 1 or stage 2, they probably wouldn't have died this year.
Yeah.
There's also another thing is, if they, and how many of those people, if they'd gotten on the absolute perfect therapy available to them at the time, rather than trying a bunch of other stuff, and then, and then not
Trying
getting
the
the right thing. So,
economical solution first, and
yeah, yeah. So,
Especially because you have
doing
to
the
think
right
about that.
thing,
Yeah.
doing the right thing, doing the best thing usually saves a lot of money and saves a lot of pain.
I
So
agree.
how do we be smarter so that we do, we do the right thing sooner?
Maybe there's a solution where, at some point we were talking about how you wouldn't use a chat window to do this, but maybe you would use a chat window to, talk about a sinus infection. Or maybe,
Mhm.
or I strained my back last night. And maybe there's a solution where having access to that, and telehealth has come a long way and been, in my opinion, very beneficial, uh, toward just getting little annoying stuff treated more quickly. Like the fact that I can wake up with, sinus pain and I can really quickly set a quick
Yeah.
appointment. And in 20 minutes, I'm on FaceTime with a doctor. An hour from now, I've got a prescription sitting at Walgreens. And that's pretty awesome. But it's very different when you get into these bigger issues like that. What would you say are the biggest barriers that prevent a tool like CureWise, for example, from reaching millions of cancer patients who could benefit today?
I don't know what the barriers are yet because we haven't run into them yet. But there are
Yeah.
things that I think we're concerned about is that there tends to be often things get slowed down by kind of a knee jerk want to regulate everything
Yeah.
to, like make everything perfect. There's a lot of people that die from because they got misdiagnosed or medical errors. Like we're not perfect today.
Yeah.
So, that it's kind of like the self-driving car thing. It's like, what's your standard? Be like way better than we are today or be perfect? There's a
Mm.
lot of like perfect being the enemy of way better than we are today. There's a lot of opportunities to make it way better than we are today. And my hope is that the people that are authoring these thousands of state level bills on on AI. I think there's a lot of people who want to get involved in the public side that want to kind of make a name for themselves and want to regulate things. And they all they're doing is helping the big companies
Yeah.
because the big companies have the money to hire lobbyists in all 50 states and go deal with all the stuff. The challenge is that you're going to stifle the innovation and the entrepreneurial side of it. So I'd like to see that there we do need to have a high bar of quality, and here's how we're going to do things,
Yeah.
but not at the expense of um, being so tight on that we like, hey, it's not perfect, it's only 10x better than we have today, but it's not perfect. We
Yeah.
should let 10x better than we have today. We should encourage those things to thrive. I
Yeah.
think that's
Right.
going to happen because I think that it's almost inevitable. People are empowering
Yeah.
themselves with AI, and you cannot stop that tidal wave. I think people
Mhm.
would be really up in arms if you tried to stop the tidal wave of empowerment that's happening from AI.
Yeah. At its
So
core, it's
I'm
harm reduction is what we're talking about,
yeah,
I would
yeah,
say, which is
Mhm.
a sometimes unpopular topic. But I mean, at its core, the idea that an imperfect solution is better than a current solution is absolutely something that has to be balanced with a need slash desire to regulate new technologies. And, we're at a time right now that is really complex from not just within our country, but globally. Like, um, there's a really a tightrope type dance you need to walk with regard to regulation right now, I feel like.
right. So the way I look at it, where there's a lot of debate on regulating AI, but it's like, oh, what about the race with other countries? Well, I look at it and say, well,
Mm.
look, we know that the cures for cancer are going to come from precision oncology, from precision medicine, getting the exact right treatment based on your genetics and figuring out how to the genetics of your cancer, figuring out how to do that more and more precisely. We know that that's a super complex task, and we know that's going to be accelerated by AI. So let's say that 5 years from now, um, we've actually figured out how to cure most cancers because we've been able to apply this technology, and we've been able to
Yeah.
truly do precision oncology. Imagine if you delayed the cure for cancer by 5 years because of regulation. You know how many
Mm.
Americans die?
So
um,
many.
you know twice as many as in all the wars since even before the American Revolution.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's like over 3 million Americans will die of cancer unnecessarily if we delayed the cure to cancer by 5 years.
Yeah.
So I think, like, the stakes on the international scale, yeah, those are all important. But, the stakes in something like curing cancer are massive. And like we know the pathway to curing cancer, but it's not something that we're going to do all by ourselves. We need the scale of kind of knowledge tool that AI enables that can handle the complexity to be able to get there, because every cancer is unique. You
Yeah.
need to handle all those variables of you, all those variables of all the medical knowledge, and you need to keep advancing on that front.
I think the ability to simulate human trials on new ideas could help bump things through phases a little quicker too, as a part of this, hopefully. Trying to think of like, because you don't wanna use a person as a guinea pig. However, for some people, depending on your situation, that might be preferred. I don't know, as on an individual basis, but I've something that's really intrigued me is the ability to get new drugs through the market quicker using AI at the trial phase, at the development phase, at to be able to come up with drugs that do more harm with less side effects, hopefully.
Well, there's a lot of drugs out there where we already know what they do, but we don't know what it could be applied to. I mean, like, I'm using an
Right.
off-label drug right now. I
Mhm.
also
That's like how
there's also how
GLP-1s kind of, yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's
GL
also how they get used. So I'm on this drug that's super effective for me, but then I start to get worried, like, well, what happens if it get resistance to it? Like, is there any I'm talking to the AI about this. Like, is there any magic to given my situation, should I do this at breakfast? Should I do it in the evening? Like,
Yeah.
is there anything what don't I know? Like, what don't I
Right.
know
Never
about
take
this?
it with an orange or something like that? Yeah.
It's usually grapefruit, but anyways,
Right, yeah.
yeah, and so, like that, like, if there's a lot of drugs that say, don't take this with grapefruit. And it's like, well, okay, well, how many other things like that are there? Well, in my case, there was one very specific one. So this drug was super effective, but is slowing down a little bit. And so I'm asking the AI, well, what else don't I know? And
Yeah.
it says, look, it doesn't matter what time of day you take it, just as long as you take that dose with 40 grams of fat. And I'm
Oh,
like, whoa, the
Wow.
pharmacist said with food, take it with food. I was doing it with, like, a low fat snack in the afternoon. I'm
I
yeah.
like,
just heard drop it in a milkshake's what I heard.
well, now I'm like, yeah, now I'm having it with a steak dinner, and I'm having the ice cream afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I mean, but the fact is, it's like that's just a little piece of information that's pretty important that,
Mhm.
but no one told me that. Like,
Yeah.
um,
Right.
but how many things like that are there about things in our
Oh,
lifestyle,
yeah.
things that we do, and those all that month before we see our doctor, there's a lot of little things we're doing that might have an impact. So how do you
There
take
are.
all of that information, and optimize that so you're getting a better response to what you're on? There are so many variables.
Mhm.
It's hard to imagine figuring that all out, all of that
Yeah.
out unaided.
Well, it
Oh,
makes me
yeah.
So
think about like what you're talking about is sort of like we think of the personal assistant that's always on, kind of like Jarvis from Iron Man, as like for work. But what about for like personal health lifestyle? Like
oh
I'm
yeah.
sure you know Brian Johnson. I watched the documentary about him recently, and his whole thing is like trying to be as healthy as possible to live as long as possible and doing everything. And like he has a business dedicated to that. He has a personal assistant helping him do that. Like, what if we all had that ability, which is quite interesting. But what is the barrier to that? I mean, like, does the current context window, like, like, how do you scale that system up? Like do we need like the 10 million context windows that like they're talking about but are really difficult? What are your thoughts?
If you're shoving everything into the context window, like your whole medical record,
Right.
and you're overloading the context window, even though, hey, it holds a million tokens, that doesn't mean it can make sense of a million
Yeah.
tokens.
I agree.
Right.
So, you need to make sure you don't overload it, and you need to focus on the right things. So you need to kind of summarize things. There's a lot of information that might be unnecessary, and there's other information that's important. So this all of this argues why the application layer is so valuable in something like medicine, or any of
Yeah.
the verticals, because
Mhm.
there's vertical specific knowledge that's going to help you optimize this, much better than a kind of just a generic chatbot. Go to
Yeah.
ChatGPT and ask about, asking for a friend, a sinus infection, whatever. But it's like if you have a serious condition and you've got a lot of medical data, you kind of need an application that knows how to curate that and use it so you're not kind of wasting all those tokens. And you also need an application that kind of acknowledges that the responses aren't going to be perfect. So I kind of want a diversity, like we're
Yeah.
doing it, like
Right.
this a diversity of responses so that I can cover all the bases.
Well, you
And
want it
then I
in
need a
RAG is where you want it, isn't it? You want it.
well, yeah. So RAG is actually not what you want in this
Ooh,
case. RAG is
interesting.
looking up. I specifically, even when you're talking to ChatGPT, I say don't search the web because that's basically RAG. It's like
Yeah.
go
Mm.
find
Okay.
some stuff and then push it in there. Well, no, I actually want the synthesized knowledge that's in the model.
Yeah.
I don't want to
Okay.
go
Mm.
pull stuff out of databases. And when I'm doing my medical record, I need to curate what's going to go into the context.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
it like RAG. I mean, RAG you use if there's way too much information for the context. So I need to really create a subset. But I need to know what I'm if what I'm asking for. So I could say that it's deciding what to put into the context for the medical question is a form of RAG. I mean, I'm not using the RAG tools for that. I'm actually writing algorithms to
Oh,
help
wow.
you kind of curate it. But actually, what I'm doing is I'm letting you do it. I'm saying like, hey, create a scenario, populate that scenario. Let's help you populate that scenario with the stuff that's relevant to that scenario. So
So does it
a
ask you
scenario.
questions like when you let's say like I'm using CureWise and I say like here's my situation. Does it tell you like okay this is the information I need or how does it work from the user
Well, right
perspective?
now, I mean, this is in private beta, rapidly evolving with more and more of the kind of the automation being added every day. But
Mhm.
Yeah.
here's where it's going. It's like I got a long medical record right now. Um, if my question is diagnostic, and I'm trying to figure out, hey, what's going on? What's really going on? There's a subset of that information that's super important, and some other stuff that maybe is less important. So I don't want the important stuff to get lost in the context with the unimportant stuff. So I do want to curate that, and I use AI to curate. Like right now, you can manually curate it, but I use AI
Yeah.
to curate that. And generally, the more recent stuff is probably more important than the old stuff. There's like
Yeah.
Right.
some basic things. But if my scenario is treatment, am I on the right treatment? It's a different, I already know my diagnosis. So, there's a bunch of
Yeah.
stuff that led up to getting the diagnosis. I don't need that anymore. But
Yeah.
like here's my treatment history and here's what my monitoring response is. And is there anything, if this stops working or whatever, is there anything else? What are my other options? That's a different kind of question. Another one
Yeah.
that people use it a lot for is clinical trials. Like, help me understand what clinical trials I qualify for and which like you could do a lot of how do I make sure that I don't do something that messes up my qualification for this clinical trial? Because a lot of the new
Mm. I
stuff,
wouldn't have thought of
it's
that.
like
Yeah.
even like yeah, the cancer especially because it's like there's we're gonna do this, and if it stops working, then we can do this, and if it stops working, and then we're gonna do this, and then oh, after that, sorry, you're out of luck. We don't have anything else to do.
Yeah.
But if you buy enough time, they'll invent something new to do. Um, so but doing it in like not doing something that like screws up what your options are is pretty important.
Yeah.
And then also the new stuff. It's like, oh, do you want to pay 25,000 bucks a month out of pocket, or you're going to get it for free because you're in a clinical trial. Cancer
Right.
stuff is very very expensive.
Yes.
So there's a lot of questions related to what treatment am I on? How's it going? Is there anything better? Are there any clinical trials? Is there anything I should be aware of? So there's a lot of different kinds of questions you might be asking. Another one is maybe the lifestyle factors. Hey, what are all the little things I'm doing to myself? My diet, exercise,
Yeah.
stress, sleep. Of course, it's like eat your vegetables and get 8 hours of sleep. There's all those, generic advice, but are there specific things that relate to my treatment. Like,
Mm,
like
and pulling that
maybe a
out.
certain
Yeah.
kind of exercise is the wrong thing to do. It's going to cause
Yeah.
damage. Maybe, like maybe you want no fat. Maybe you want it to be with fat. Like, there's a
Yeah.
lot of different factors. So the way it's structured now is that there are different scenarios for different kinds of questions. Um, that obviously needs to get boiled down to, like, the beast mode button that kind of that does a lot more things automatically. It's currently for the power. It's for the power user who wants to explore all the options,
Yeah.
because
Right.
it's still, we haven't launched it to the public yet. We've launched it privately. You need to sign up on the wait list, and you need to, talk to somebody on our team, and you get invited in. And we want to work with you and make sure that we're understanding how you're using it, so we can help optimize it.
If I was someone who had, recent cancer diagnosis, or that I'm worried about my health, or I just, want to be more, a better advocate for myself, I can go to the website and I can reach out and ask to join the private wait list. Besides that, what would you want, like, a cancer patient to know right now about using AI? So, like, let's say that they are struggling with exactly what you went through. You've been on both sides. You've been a patient who basically saved your own life with AI, and now you're someone building these tools. Like, is there one tip you can share about what you did that could help someone going through this similar situation? Like, what would you do if you were them? Acknowledging you're not a doctor, this is not medical
Yeah.
advice, but
I
just
think
for
that
education.
what I'm saying is actually what a lot of people do today. But I'm saying that you can do better by using AI to empower you to do even better. But you've got to educate yourself. You've got to learn everything you can about your disease, so you can ask the right questions and make sure you're getting the best possible treatment that's available to you, which is in everybody's interest to do. I mean, it's the insurance
Yeah.
company wants you to be on the best treatment. The doctor wants you to be on the best treatment. You want to be in the best treatment, but it's something you got to learn about and advocate for, because healthcare is massive, and it's kind of feels like it's stretched thin. It's like you can't, it's like, oh, we can't get you on the schedule for another 3 months. Like you really got to optimize how you interact with healthcare system, because it's big and overloaded, and there might not be enough doctors. So you just got to be like, how do you get every bit of value out of the interaction you have with the healthcare system? That comes down to educating yourself. And it
Nice.
comes down to understanding your medical record, understanding these test results, understanding what they mean, understanding, I mean, in cancer specifically, there's offense, what you're doing to kill the cancer. There's
Yeah.
defense, because all of this stuff you're going to do, and the cancer itself is probably going to be immune compromising.
Mhm.
So how do you do well? There's a whole bunch of stuff I did, and there's a bunch of stuff I'm on the defense side that I also knew nothing about until, I'm asking the right questions, and the AI is saying, hey, you know what, here are the things you can do. And I asked my doctors about it, and they end up saying, oh yeah, you know what? Yes, we'll do that. If you
That's
don't
awesome.
ask for it, you don't get it. If you do ask for it, you get it. This happens
Yeah.
all the time in medicine. So you got to know what to ask for. So,
Yeah.
um, I think CureWise is going to be an optimized tool for helping you get there faster, and helping you manage all of the stuff you need to manage. Because it's not just about interacting with the AI and getting learning. It's like, you can clip. I learned something. I clip this, put it in my notebook, tag it. I've got my whole notebook of all the stuff I've learned. And, like, hey, I need to, like, give me the script, like, help me rehearse the script for what I'm going to talk to my doctor about.
Yeah.
Let me now intersect that with clinical trials. And so there's a lot of features, now I want to get into a clinical trial. How do I manage the workflow of that? I got to reach out. I got to talk to people. It's like almost like a
Yeah, I have
CRM,
no
needed
idea how to do
to
that.
deal with
Yeah.
clinical trials. So there's a lot of what we're building, which is the kind of the management system to
Mhm.
help you manage the stuff that you kind of don't have any choice but to manage. So get on the wait list, and then we're going to reach out in regularly, but in September, saying like, okay, like, we're going to accept another cohort of people, but it's going to be people that we work closely with. And, there's a lot of caveats, but it's going to be a Q4 that we want to launch to the public.
Starting to expand
Perfect.
and
Yeah.
okay, that's great. That's great. Well, as is
Awesome.
tradition here on the Neuron podcast, we like to have a round robin question at the end that we each take a stab at answering, and as is often the case, it requires a little bit of a crystal ball. So today the question is, in 3 years, what do you believe we will stop doing manually in healthcare because AI does it better 90% of the time?
I feel like I should answer before you, Steve,
Go-
because
go- go
yours will
for
be
it.
much more informed.
Like, I don't wanna
than
follow
mine.
Steve. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to follow you. No offense. What will we stop doing manually in health? I think taking notes. I think the number one thing I've seen that doctors are adapting, like more than anything else, and I don't know, Steve, if you have a different answer to this, is the transcription, like
Yeah.
the AI transcription stuff. Like, we wrote an article like a couple months ago that was sort of inspired by me going to my doctor, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I was like the last holdout of doing AI transcription in our company." And I knew about a couple of them. I think it's Ambience is one, and then the other one is Microsoft Dragon. It's like the kind of those are the big two.
Yeah.
And every doctor I know now uses those, so that it's just that you have something in the background taking all the context of the meeting, so that nothing is missed when it goes into the computer system. But she was interesting because she basically said, "Oh well, I still like making manual notes myself because it helps me kind of connect with the patient."
Commit
And
it
so
to
I
memory and yeah.
yeah, and I think there's something to that too. So I don't know if it'll be like we never take notes, but I was talking about it with her, and she was basically like, "Well, I spend so much time, or doctors spend so much time at a keyboard clacking away. If we're actually face to face and you know that everything's being captured around you, you can actually have a much more human interpersonal relationship with them." And
Focus
I
on
think
it
that's one
more,
of the
yeah.
yeah, I think that's one of the best things that could happen from AI adoption anywhere, is that we stop spending so much time on our keyboards and looking at screens, and we actually spend more time with each other. And that's
That's
my
cool.
take.
Although the question was 3 years from now. So that's more like that's happening today in 2025. The doctors have the
That's a
note
good
taker
point.
on, and like my doctors all do that. The note taker's on, and it takes their notes for them. But or they're on a
That's
video
fair. That's fair.
conference with it's transcribed like every other video thing we're on. Um,
Good
so
call. Good call out.
so, yeah, Grant, you got to think bigger. You got to think bigger.
You're right.
Farther,
You're right.
farther, yeah.
I know AI moves so fast. It's like, of course, like that'll be done by
3 months
Tuesday.
ago, it sounded really futuristic, though, didn't it?
3 months ago, yes, it did. Yeah.
I think for me, and it's something I kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, is that I think the little stuff will get easier to deal with quicker. I think as far as like, a minor injury or a sinus infection or the flu, I think that at some point becomes a thing where you're probably communicating with AI in your healthcare app that you're already using, for example, and it's able to look at your records and say, cool, and shoot off some amoxicillin to Walgreens, a prescription or something. I say Walgreens over and over, sorry. But,
I'd love to get rid of the primary care doctor as the router that you have to go through to go to the specialist you actually need. Like, that is such a dumb backwards system where you have to see someone to tell you to see someone else. Like, let's just automate all of that and get that over with.
Well, your primary care doctor is going to have AI, so he's going to be a multi-specialist. So
fair.
So your primary care doctor is going to be awesome because your primary care doctor is going to know everything just by AI. So 3 years from now, I mean, I know where CureWise is going to be 3 years from now. I mean, everybody with cancer is going to be using it to figure out the best possible treatment options given where they are.
Yeah.
And for every other disease on the planet, healthcare is 4,000 different billion-dollar niches. There are a lot of people like me and all those other niches that have some personal motivation to try to use AI to create better solutions. They're all going to be using our API because
Yeah.
90% of what we're doing in cancer applies to everything else too. This whole idea of multiple points of view,
Yeah.
synthesizing the responses, the management tools, all of that. We're publishing our API so that people can build applications for all kinds of different things in healthcare
Yeah.
and take advantage of that layer. And then the third thing that's going to happen is as millions of people use this for their own case study in cancer. We're going to we are going to be building models that use those case
Ah,
studies, use that data to help figure out what works and what doesn't, and help and advance the cause of personalized medicine and precision
Yeah,
oncology. I mean, why it's called CureWise. I mean, we don't have a cure today. Today, what we need is to do the best we can with what's known today. But
that's right.
the path to a cure will be to understand all these unique cases and to have a new model for medical knowledge that's not depending on a, like, a 20-year path to learn one thing, but where we can take all this diverse data and from all these diverse unique cases and learn the connections and learn the pathways and build a new kind of medical knowledge from that.
That's awesome. Well, Steve,
that's
thank you
cool.
so much for joining us today and sharing all this science with us. It's been a lot to take in, and it's really fascinating to see where this is all going. And we've been excited to have a conversation just like this for a long time.
Yeah.
So, where can people go to learn more about CureWise and get on your list?
CureWise.com. Yeah, we
Awesome.
got the .com, not the not just the .ai. There's a lot of things going on in medicine where, especially with cancer, where it's kind of a bold statement to say our real mission is the cure.
Yeah,
I'm like, look, like nobody wants more management tools for the disease. What we actually want is a cure. But
yeah,
the pathway there goes through, doing a better job of managing it, understanding what people are doing, getting the data, because that's where we're going to get closer and closer to a cure. So, the ultimate moonshot is actually to advance the cures. I mean,
yeah.
President Nixon declared the war on cancer in 1971, and that was, if we could put a man on the
Wow.
moon, certainly we can cure cancer by 1975. Well,
Been
we've
hearing
made a
that
lot
for
of
a hot
progress.
minute, haven't we?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we've made a lot of progress, but
Yeah,
it's, the complexity is beyond human scale at this point,
yeah.
and this is the first time we've had a tool that can really help us master the complexity, and that's AI. So, our mission is
That's
to be at the
fantastic.
forefront of applying AI to cancer and to advance the whole field.
Well, everyone, if you enjoyed today's episode, I hope you'll take a moment to like, subscribe. Also, pop over to the neurondaily.com and sign up for the Neuron newsletter as well. Join 500,000 others who read it every morning. Thank you, listeners. We sure appreciate you taking time out of your day to learn more about AI, about CureWise, and the good work that Steve's doing over there. And that's it for today. Farewell for now, humans.